Welcome back to News and Views. I'm your guest host, Tahir Maepa. As tensions between Iran, Israel, and United States escalates, many are asking what role emerging powers should play. Should the Global South and BRICS nations remain neutral observers, or is this a defining moment that requires strategic leadership and mediation? We are now joined by my brother Thembisa Fakude, who is a senior researcher and a director at Afrasid. Habibi, salaam alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you? How are you? How are you? How are you?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Good to see
You know, you have worked in the Middle East for many years. You understand the dynamics of the Middle East and what is happening now. You are the right person to try and really assist us here, Habibi. How would you characterize the current Iran, Israel, and U.S. tension?
Well, it's a long-standing tension, as you know. This started when the Islamic Republic of Iran was established, and after the return of Ayatollah Khomeini in 1979. And the Iranian students held the American diplomats hostage, and the tensions between the United States others, particularly the Europeans, to sanction Iran, accusing Iran of having ambitions of establishing a nuclear weapon, notwithstanding, of course, that Iran has said that their nuclear program was meant to, is a civil nuclear program meant to augment what they currently have in terms of energy supplies. But besides that, Ayatollah Khamenei and others in Iran have said that Islamically it's haram to have or procure a weapon of mass destruction. So that's been very clear. But the of course, the Americans have never accepted that because they want the Iranian oil. Never happy with the removal of Shah of Iran. So they continue putting pressure on Iran. And we see now, of course, this attack is meant for nothing else except to put a friendly government, as they correctly put it, is about regime change, to put a friendly government so that Donald Trump can continue stealing the resources of Iran as he started doing in Venezuela.
Now, where does the Global South stand in this unfolding conflict? Because in one moment, the Global South is the topic, and it seems like it's a movement that is heading somewhere. But when conflict come in, there don't seem to be any coordination in terms of the Global South position. We sort of take sides, despite the fact that we know that the Global South is the most uh, um, oppressed economically and otherwise in the world. Shouldn't we be pulling together now, especially now?
Well, the Global South is fragmented, and the Global South has its own problems. One, of course, would have expected that the Global South, particularly BRICS, will have acted as a bloc when Donald Trump imposed on the world the trade tariffs. But what we saw is standalone positions and negotiations, whether it was South Africa, Russia, well, not Russia, but China, India, and others within BRICS, for example, who decided not to go in as a bloc to deal with Trump, but to go individually. So Global South is fragmented. But also, Global South has its own national interests. If you look at Narendra Modi, for example, of India, it's deep in the pockets of Israelis and Benjamin Netanyahu. He was there not long ago. Russia is busy with its own challenges, fighting an unwinnable war in Ukraine. And you've got China that is, by size, one would have expected that they would have taken this lead in terms of representing the voices of the Global South, but we don't see them doing that. Instead, they're also internally looking and looking at their own interest. When it comes to Iran, of course, China has got a very close economic relationship with Iran, and the shutting down of Strait of Hormuz is also likely to impact on China. South Africa is just too far away to be involved, even though South Africa has got a much, much more deeper national interest in Iran because we own one of the biggest companies there, MTN, which is South African, and we still have funds that were still to be transferred to South Africa but are blocked because of sanctions. So South Africa is more likely to be even more interested in what goes on in Iran because of our financial interest that we have in Iran. So this is the fragmentation of the Global South. I don't see them unifying in terms of helping, at least, Iran. Iran will have to help itself, perhaps invite the assistance of Russia and China, but to have a Global South speaking in one voice, or at least BRICS, which is a platform that's supposed to be representing the Global South, is highly unlikely.
In the absence of a unified BRICS position, is South African neutrality stance and foreign policy sustainable?
Well, it's sustainable. We're a middle power, but not only a middle power. We don't have a fully functioning, especially when it comes to war. There's no ways that we can join any foreign wars. That's one. Number two is, South Africa tends to bite more than it can chew, but at the moment we've got problems, particularly with what South Africa is trying to achieve with the United States. It's involving a charm offensive because it's trying to restart the relationship between itself and the United States. So it's not going to jeopardize that. We saw, for example, when the drills were organized by BRICS, which included Iran, Cyril Ramaphosa issued an instructions to the Minister of Military, to the Defense Ministry, I'm not quite sure what it's called now, but Andrew Mutsaha. And he insisted that Iran be withdraw from those drills, but of course they continued because they were already here. That tells you that there is some sort of pressure, but at the same time there's some sort of a strategy to try and not further aggravate the situation between the United States and South Africa. So we are in that position at the moment. So South Africa has interest in Iran and it's continued to work with the Iranians economically, but I don't see them in any way or form overtly supporting Iran this time around because they've got their own charm offensive in terms of restarting relationships, restarting a relationship with the United States, which has over the years, particularly following South Africa taking the Israeli government to the International Court of Justice.
Could this accelerate fragmentation of global power structures? Because as you rightfully said, the superpowers are really engaged in multiple challenges across the globe. So most of these countries are looking more internally. But with all the efforts to put the Global South countries together, whether through BRICS or through political maneuvering, will these structures defragment because of what is happening?
Well, they're likely to defragment, at least, certainly for the next 36 months, whilst Donald Trump is in power. In the Middle East, you are likely to see the exiting of the Americans from at least countries in the Gulf after what Iran has done in terms of bombing the American installations in those countries. Others will argue that this came quite convenient for the Gulf countries who have been trying to or wanting to get rid of American presence in the Gulf. But I think after this, you are likely to see the exiting of the Americans from the Gulf, and they'll have to be replaced. And I think Turkey is likely to replace the American military bases by providing security to the Gulf countries. And if that happens, then we're facing a new reconfiguration of the security presence in the Middle East. And that will mean, of course, bad news for Israel, because if you're going to have a Iran that will still be standing, and we've got a new entrant in terms of providing security in the form of Turkey, then Israel has to be extremely concerned about what will be unraveling as a result of that. So I think there's going to be that reconfiguration, but at the same time, there are lots of other platforms that would want to take advantage of the situation, particularly the kids, as we already see what's happening in Iran when Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu said Iranians must rise and replace the government that if they want to topple. I think the kids are going to try and take that advantage as an opposition in Iraq. But if that happens, of course, that's going to impact on the Turkey, it's going to impact on Iraq, because there is this ambition of the Greater Kurdistan. And I think that is the grouping which will get support from the Israelis and the Americans. And they're the ones who are actually posing a threat at the moment in terms of civil disorganization and civil destabilization of politics inside Iran. So when Americans and Netanyahu talks about Iranians rising up, it's not the protesters who not necessarily are aligned to a political movement, except for a leader who is outside Iran. The formal and the most organized opposition in Iran is the Kurds. And if that happens, then you're going to see a fragmentation of the region, but it's going to be a much, much more bigger war.
Since BRICS doesn't have the stomach to enter into the fray or be involved in this way, shouldn't BRICS be pursuing a mediation role then? I'm talking about the BRICS nation, which Iran is part of.
Well, it's not. Russia, which is a major power or member of BRICS, is fighting a war with Ukraine. And they are not in a position to be mediating in any way or form, even though they've offered. Then you've got United Arab Emirates, which is part and parcel of the problem. Mohammed bin Zayed is detested in the region because of his complicity, whether it's in Palestine or in Iran or all other countries in the region, including Sudan. So as a member of BRICS, he can't do much because he's disliked by everyone. And of course, it's not in his interest to see a stable region because it's part and parcel of that problem. South Africa, as I put it earlier on, has its own problems. So I don't see BRICS as a bloc taking any position. China might push for some sort of mediation or involvement, but I don't see a collective position, because if you look at all of these countries individually, India is a problem, deeply in the pockets of Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel. So there's no way that they will be trusted to play any role. So BRICS, as it stands, it can't really play any meaningful, constructive role in trying to solve this current problem.
Shukran Habibi. That was Thembisa Fakude, Senior Researcher and Director at Afrasid, joining us to try and make a sense of what is happening in the Middle East. We are now going to take an ad break and then we'll continue with the rest of our program.
More than